In this video, we're going to walk through a process of using the barcode scanner plugin for PhoneGap build inside a UX component in Alpha Anywhere. So I would say that there are three main components to this this whole process, three main pieces. There's of course Alpha Anywhere, which kind of allows us to do this whole thing, which is brilliant. And then there is Github, which is a repository of files that we feed into PhoneGap build. Now, if I were to, let me just log out of, sign out of PhoneGap build, and I'm just going to sign back in again. Now, PhoneGap build and GitHub are joined, kind of joined at the hip, so you can sign in with your own Adobe ID, or you can sign in with your GitHub ID. So I just have to do that, and it automatically knows kind of who I am because I've already been there before. So that's the easiest way to do it. So it's really nice. And these are the applications that I've been working on, and we're going to be working with this Alpha UX Scan application. So the GitHub repository holds the files that PhoneGap builds needs to put together into and install for each one of these items and each one of these platforms. And so let's go and look at GitHub first. And this is a format of folders and files that you need to put together in this specific format for PhoneGap build. Now, in order to make a copy of this information, so for example, this is pretty much a copy of the information that Bob Moore put together when he created the build for running the barcode scanner from an HTML page. So what I did was I created a fork from Bob's information on GitHub, and now I'm allowed to change that because it's my own build now. So I went in here and I changed a few things. There's a CSS file that belongs to the index.html file, so there's some interesting information in there. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail for that. The image folder, well, these really can be called anything. They don't have to be image or res or anything like that, but they are established in the config.xml file. The config.xml file is required by PhoneGap build. We just pop in here, we go to settings for this particular app. You see a nice bright message. Your application details are bound to the config.xml file in your application package. So in order to change any of these settings, you need to change the config.xml file and then let PhoneGap build know that you've made changes. So this icon's coming from that file under GitHub. My title, my package ID, my version, the configuration or version number of PhoneGap build that I'm using, it's all coming from that config.xml file. So let's go and have a look at that. Config.xml, there's my ID, there's my version, just as it shows up here. All that information is flowing through into PhoneGap build. There's my email, information about what we're utilizing in the hardware. Really important part here, PhoneGap-version. We specify here at 2.9.0. Now, I believe if you don't specify a version here, PhoneGap build will use the latest version of PhoneGap. I think 3.0.0 is almost out. I don't think it's out yet, but I probably wouldn't do that because you're going to be testing under a specific version. You know your app's going to be working under a specific version, so make sure that you give it the specific version that you want to work with, because changes do occur between versions that can certainly break your build. And I'll explain that in a moment because that's kind of important. Other settings, orientation, that sort of thing. Here are the folders with the icons in it for the splash screen and the other icons we'd be using. And one really important part, another really important part is right in here. In order to use the barcode scanner, PhoneGap build requires you to ask for it in this manner. So it's got to be in here exactly like this. or else PhoneGap build's not going to be happy and won't build for you. And I think that's about it for the config.xml file. Really important file, but fairly straightforward. Now our index.html file, kind of some standard stuff up here. And PhoneGap build also requires you to include this PhoneGap.js file, well, a reference to it. You don't need to supply the file at all, but PhoneGap build wants you to put the reference in here so it can supply the file properly. So always make sure that's inside there. Then we run another script down here. We do an add event listener, make sure our device is ready before we do anything else. Now, PhoneGap.js gives us a couple of things that we need, that Alpha needs, in order to run, in order to load and run the Cordova files properly within Alpha Anywhere. And the two things that it needs, coming from the PhoneGap.js file, again, which PhoneGap build loads itself. We don't have to worry about that. We just need the reference. That the two things that it needs are Cordova version and a Cordova platform. And both of those come from that PhoneGap.js file in the form of device.cordova and device.platform. Now, prior to 2.9.0 build, PhoneGap build, the device.cordova held the Cordova version, and it would just simply be the 5 characters 2.8.0. As of 2.9.0, there's a ton of other code in there. I don't know how many other characters, but it's not simply 5 characters that define the pure version any longer. So I wasn't getting a good build on that until I realized that device.cordova was no longer just a 5-character string. But the 5 characters that we need are sitting at the front, so we just do a substring on that, assign it to a variable, and then pass that variable along to our page. So what we've got here is a window.location, so we're opening a page. I'm just doing it on my local host. But here's the page I'm opening, and I'm passing it 2 variables, so they'll be request variables that we don't have to do anything with them, but I do want to do a little bit of processing with them, and I'll explain that in a moment. But we can just pass this to them. This is just a pure, simple, saved A5W page, but we're passing it Cordova version, which I've saved off here, and we're passing it device.platform inside for Cordova version, underbar Cordova version. It's got to be exactly like that, and underbar Cordova platform. It's got to be exactly like that. So we're passing in 2.9.0, and we're passing in iOS in this particular case. So those are 2 items we're passing into our page. The rest of the stuff down here, this is coming from the index.css file, and it's defining a logo for us, plus a bunch of other stuff. Device ready. You'll see these messages pop up when we actually run the application, and that's it. All the rest of the commented code is all Bob. Pretty much just some tests I had, plus most of Bob's code that was running, and that's about it for the index. HTML file. Got a logo here that's running, and that's it. So we're running our page. We're passing through 2 pieces of information: platform and version. So into Alpha Anywhere, into the let's leave the A5W page alone for a moment. So about the version and the platform that we're passing in. If we go to project properties, we're looking at Cordova PhoneGap libraries. We're asking it to load a local version. There's a built-in version as well, but I believe Bob Moore told me that it's an older version of the files, so it's better to pass in and control what you want to do yourself anyway. But this information down here describes exactly how Alpha Anywhere needs a structure for the Cordova JavaScript file to be set up, where to find it. Now the Cordova JavaScript file I've got for 2.9.0. I found that, and I put it into this folder structure that Alpha needs, which is JavaScript, Cordova, platform, and the version. So if we go and look here, we'll go to JavaScript. Here's JavaScript. I've got a folder named JavaScript, and underneath that I've got a folder named Cordova. Then I've got one for Android and iOS. Now if I'm passing through iOS, Alpha knows to go and look at iOS. And if I'm passing through 2.9.0, it knows to go and look in this folder. It's all brilliant. And it finds the Cordova version 2.9.0 of the JavaScript file and loads that. So that's really good. So the project properties tells Alpha, yeah, we're going to be working with PhoneGap libraries, Cordova libraries, so this is where you're going to go and find them. So yes, if you need them, this is where they're going to be. Now let's go to web components. Here's my web component, here's my UX component. Now I've got a lot of stuff in here which we don't need to work with. Basically I've got a panel navigator and I've got a panel card. Panel card number 1 is the stuff that we really need. These are just all test stuff that I'm doing down here. So we've just got a header and we've got a button that says press to scan here. I'll show you the code for that in a moment. And I've got a text box control to receive the information from the QR scan that we're doing. But let's pop into properties first. So far we've loaded a PhoneGap.js file in the index.html file. So that helps us identify exactly what device we're coming from, what version we're coming through from, so that we can pass that on to Alpha. And now we're going to load the barcode scanner JavaScript file. Let me just back up for just 1 second. So we've got the index.html file. That's where we're grabbing the PhoneGap.js library, and we are getting device and platform information from it. We're passing that on to Alpha Anywhere. Alpha Anywhere understands that we want and need to load the Cordova file, so it goes out and grabs the Cordova.javascript file, loads that. So now it's ready to go, and since it's ready to go, and that's all functioning at the A5W page level, when we start loading our UX component, now we can, because Cordova is loaded, we can now load our barcode scanner.javascript file, and this is the 2.9.0 version of the barcode scanner plugin file that we need. And it's sitting under, I've just put it under JavaScript PhoneGap build plugins. So you can see the flow of information from the index file into the A5W page, and stuff gets loaded at each segment as we go along. So now we're telling it to load the barcode scanner.javascript file, and we're also saying down here, because this is checked, that we are actually loading something that we're going to be needing for Cordova and PhoneGap libraries, and just go and make sure that everything's good and everything is getting loaded. So those two properties get checked, once here, once in the project properties, and we make sure we load our barcode scanner file here. Good. And so that's our UX component for its properties. Now let's go and have a quick look at what the button does. We're going to do a try here. We're going to set up the scanner by loading a Cordova.require, and this is the format that you need to follow in order to run the scanner, exactly like this. Then we can do a scanner.scan. A good result will come through here, and we're going to do a set value, standard dialog object stuff, into the text box control that we have with the result.text from the scan itself. If we've got an error, either one of these will fire, so we know what's going on there, we hope. So that's all the code you need to run the scanner. We'll save that off, and that's it for this page. I've got these other items sitting here, just a couple of text box fields to hold the platform and version that are coming through from the index.html file that's being passed into the A5W page. and I've got a client side sitting here. You'll see that I have an underbar Cordova version and Cordova platform variable set up, and I'm just doing a set value into those text files here. So where do these two guys come from? Let's go and have a look there. Let's go into our A5W page for this, into the source. Now I don't have to do this. This can be just a plain simple A5W page. We're passing in the version and platform from PhoneGap build. PhoneGap build's helping us do that, so we're passing that information in to our page when we call it, and as long as those two checkbox properties are checked and we've got our libraries being loaded, everything's good. We don't need to do anything else. However, what happens if you want to load a UX component that has the barcode scanner on it that is not the first page that you call? In that case, so this would be our opening page and our UX component would run, or whatever else you're running, and you click another button which happens to load another page. You've got to get that information into the second page, the A5W page that you load, because it's got the barcode scanner on it, and you need to pass on the Cordova version platform that we started with in the beginning. So I was doing grabbing a query string and doing a whole bunch of JavaScript stuff, and Bob Moore suggested that this would be a better way to do it. So so thanks for that, Bob. Makes a lot more sense, because now the code that Bob supplied, we're setting up session variables for underbar Cordova version and platform, setting them to an unknown state first, and then we're testing for our request variables. If they're there, set the session variables. Great. And I'm also setting a JavaScript variable for Cordova version and for Cordova platform, because I might want to use them. So I'm setting up a session variable and I'm setting up JavaScript variable. And that's actually what's, again, you don't need these stuff, but that's actually what's being populated into our UX component by this bit of code and into these controls down here. And again, that's primarily just to be able to, well, I might want it for something, but primarily to pass that version and platform information onto a second page, and maybe a third page and a fourth page. You just keep passing it on as you need it, and then you'll be able to load the barcode scanner.javascript file in those pages if you need to. Let's see, what else is there? So there's lots of ways to save off the Cordova version and platform. You could add them to the dialog object and extend that object there and include those, so that would be nice. It would keep the session space and the variable space fairly clean. One reason you might want to put them into session variables, I mean, you can always get this information, but sometimes it's nice to kind of waste a session variable just to make things easy. On the after dialog validate, let's say you've got a control, some information on a control, and you save that information. So this event fires after dialog validate fires. And part of the after dialog validate stuff is the ability to redirect to a URL, which is really cool. So if you do this and you want to run the barcode scanner from, let's say you're running another page, another alpha page, then you need to pass along that information to that alpha page in order to run the scanner. So here we've got e.url, passing a page along. We've got our session variables saved. I don't have it set up here, but you can see how you could put together a string that takes advantage of those session variables right in here, so you don't have to go and grab anything else anywhere. You could grab it from the page itself. You do have that data submitted information, and in this particular case, that's probably what I would do because I do have those saved off already. But as you can see, it's alpha anywhere. You can do anything you want, and a number of number of different ways, as a matter of fact. So it's all great. So we've got all our information in Alpha Anywhere. Let me just close this. Go back to Web Components. There's our PhoneGap plugins. There's our JavaScript file for our barcode scanner. And again, I make sure that I get all these. I'll probably put these files into the repository, so they'll just go along with any copies or forks that you do. So at least you'll have the current versions of 2.9.0. So I've got to remember to do that. We've got our A5W pages. So everything is set up that we need here. We've got our GitHub set up. And now if we go and look at PhoneGap build, all this stuff is up to date. And if I look at the builds, I'm not really going to talk about the iOS stuff. Again, you need a certificate. You can create. I think you can create that on the web under your developer's account, and you need a provisioning profile which holds the IDs for the devices that you're going to be testing on. Apple allows you up to 100 devices to test on, so that's great. You can build them on the Mac. You can build them on the web. I believe, I haven't done this yet, but it would be an interesting process to go through. But in order to build them on the web and bring them down to a Windows machine, you can download them to a Windows machine and then upload them here to PhoneGap build. I believe you need OpenSSL to be running in order to do that. I tried it without OpenSSL, and the files, the certificates file and the provisioning file get corrupted when they get downloaded, and they come back up here, and of course it won't work when you start loading them in here. But you just load them in here, you add keys, that sort of thing. And so I'm not going to go through that process. I'm not sure what you need for Android, but I don't know. I don't think a key is actually necessary there. Now the files I built on the Mac, and there's a whole process under the developers section for Apple to do that, so you can follow that process. So here we are. We've made a few changes, let's assume, on the repository. And now we need to tell PhoneGap build that we've got a new repository out there. Well, a new build of it. It already knows which repository we're working with. So now I'm going to perform an update code, and I'm going to pull in the latest information from here. So it's going to do that. We'll give it a moment. And as soon as it pulls the new information in, it starts building stuff. And iOS is always the very last one to get built. So there we go. HP is being built. And now iOS has been built. And we can scan the QR code to perform an install on a particular device that we're working with. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm just going to pop into Alpha. I'm just going to close the server. I'm just going to open it again. Make sure we're fresh there. Back up here. Now I'm going to fire up my iPad. So there we are. And I'm going to fire up, move that out of the way. I'm going to fire up a scanner that I've got. I'm going to scan my QR code. iOS asked me if I want to install, of course. This is just great the first time you do this as well, and you can actually see this running. Well, I think it's great anyway. So we've got our install. So that's great. So now I'm going to tap on the app, get it running. You know, once in a while it just does this, kind of just sits there. So I'm just going to close that down. And we're going to fire it up again. And this time, we got our splash screen, we've got our icon pop up, the information you could see loaded there. And there's an alert that I've got for PhoneGap. Now that's really interesting. So let's pop back into Alpha just for a moment. I'm going to go back into the web component, to my UX component. Now what Alpha did for us was they put a client-side event in here saying on Cordova ready. And that's to tell us, is stuff loaded? Are we ready to go? Which is really nice. So we know that things are loaded and everything's okay. So I just put that quick message in there just to verify that things are good, things are going, everything's loaded, it found the files it needed to find. If you're not getting that message, you're not getting that far. So it's great little checks and balances that Alpha gave us for that. So back to, PhoneGap is ready, so that's good. So here we are with our first panel card, and I can just click on scan a QR code. Oh, I think I changed that actually. Sorry about that, I changed that. So we're just going to navigate over to the panel card that we have the code running in for the barcode scanner. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop into, I don't need that running anymore. I'm going to go and create a QR code to scan. There we go. Good. I'm going to bring back my iPad mini. And I'm going to tap here. Scanner opens. We can scan. And QR code comes through into the scan result code. So let's shut all that down again. I don't think it registered my tap. We get loaded, loading device properties at the bottom there. PhoneGap is ready. I'm going to scroll to the panel card that has my button. I'm going to press it. Up pops my scanner. I'm going to scan, and comes through my scan result. So that's about it for this process. I don't think there's anything else here. That other panel card I had running, you can see we've got iOS in here and 2.9 in here. So I was loading those values from the FibW page where we created variables for that stuff. And I think that's about it. I don't think there's anything else. So thanks very much for watching. If you see anything in here that you need or you'd like more explanation for, just please give me a shout. Thanks.